Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning, John. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Raphael. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I love your last name. I mean, if you need a lawyer,
Yeah, just give me a call, right?
give you a call. Absolutely. So I want to get to know you. And I think one of the best ways to get to know how someone who has done so much with their lives, how did they even get to the position you're in? I think it stems from our childhood, for all of us, including myself. The things, the people that influenced us, the actions that were taken on either our behalf or by ourselves. So I'd love to hear where'd you grow up and who influenced you before the age of 10 even?
Yeah, I love talking about like childhood and how we grew up. It's always a great conversation. I grew up in a rural town, small town in central Oklahoma, about 8,000 people. Kind of a normal family, mom, dad, and I had a sister that was older than me. And life was pretty good growing up in the beginning. Our town was, Oklahoma is an oil state, and
Mhm.
our town was pretty affluent, and there was an oil boom going on in the 80s as I was growing up, and so life was pretty good. My dad owned a auto parts company. My mom was a teacher, and I felt loved, and I was taught, a lot of things outside of school, and I was taught to read, and uh, so it was a very loving experience growing up, and then as kind of time progressed, the bottom fell out of the oil market, and so there was a bust,
Mm.
and the tax base to town kind of dried up, and so as I got through those middle school years and kind of on past all that, I things kind of started to turn. Not so much money in town. We had financial problems in our family. Uh, Dad lost the auto parts company that our family had
Mm.
for I think over 30 years.
Oh my gosh. Right.
So that after those developmental years were over, things weren't quite as good. Which I think was also in itself a rich experience,
Mhm.
because you get to kind of see both sides of life, both sides of the coin on what is and what isn't. And so uh my parents got divorced, my sister went to college,
Mm.
and so it was I couldn't live with my mom, and my dad could have gotten a corporate job or something like that, but he decided to go be a truck driver. So um uh I ended up living by myself for the last 2 years of high school.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so and my dad would send me money, and I, take care of the house. I went took
Mhm.
care of my grandparents some. And I enjoyed my childhood. I even enjoyed high school.
Mhm.
And I very much grew up in kind of a life is too important to be taken seriously kind of perspective. I was kind of a free spirit,
Gotcha.
and that defined kind of who I was. I was kind of a rebel, and that's who I was as a kid.
Mm. So on your own, last 2 years of high school,
Yeah.
parties, what were you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it as almost a fraternity house in high school,
Mhm.
I was kind of like, as weird as it was, I was kind of like the den mother, uh,
Yeah.
I kind of made sure I took care of my other friends, and made sure they didn't get in trouble with their parents, and we didn't get in trouble with the police, and kept everything, kind of sane and kind of organized chaos. So it was a very positive experience, but it was kinda wild. Yeah, it was kinda wild.
So when you consider, kind of wild, huh? Um, but you called yourself a den mother. You were making sure that your friends were okay.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
I think there's something deep inside of me that has always been that wanted to take care of people, uh help people help themselves,
Mm,
and I really enjoyed being around people. I'm an introvert, but I'm kind of one of those introverted extroverts that I kind of need to
mm,
be by myself, but I also need to be around people sometimes. And so uh it was just nice to have people around. I was kind of an awkward kid before high school, so I didn't really get out much. I wasn't very social. And so in high school, I kind of figured I had a moment my freshman year of high school where I understood kindness and what it meant to life and how it would be easier to like go out in the world and be social. And so it was a kind of a moment for me where I realized, oh, I can go out in the world and have friends and uh,
mm,
kind, and it totally changed my kind of social life in high school.
mm. What kept you in high school, being that you're living by yourself? A lot of people, uh, we know a lot of kids that wouldn't want to stay in high school. They're like, "Ooh, I got the freedom. I can do whatever I want." What
That's
was
a good
that motivating
question.
factor for you?
Well, my parents still, I mean, they had raised me well, I think,
Mm,
and I kind of understood that I needed to get a diploma, and also, I wanted to get out. I wanted to go somewhere and do stuff, and uh, I figured I needed to graduate high school to do that. And my friends as well. I enjoyed being around my friends, and
mm,
uh, I had a strong group of people that I cared
mm.
about. So I think that played a factor as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, there's a lot of kids now who never finished high school. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a shame. I mean, there's people who can't be in a regular high school. Like, for example, one of my clients, he's autistic. He's 23 years old. Right now, he's trying his best to get his GED, and he complains about it. You know, but the thing is that he can't be in a regular high school. He's autistic, but he's still striving to get that diploma. And I say to him, what are you learning? He goes, I'm math, reading, da, da, da. I said, what's your favorite subject? He's one of these, like, I don't know. And he goes, I said, how about reading? He goes, yeah, reading's good. I like reading. So we can always find something, even when we're going through something that we don't necessarily like, that we can go, I like that part. Right? What was your favorite part of high school besides your friends?
Uh, I really don't like school. I never have. I've
Mm,
never liked school. I didn't. I was in debate, and I did cross examination debate with a teammate, and
mm,
but we had, I think, from eighth grade through my senior year, we had 5 different teachers, so one every year, and so there was no continuity, and it was kind of a mess. So I never really learned it. I really enjoyed it though. I think I would have been good at it if we'd had a solid program, um, and I did enjoy the overall experience. I enjoyed people, not just my friends, but I think the thing I most enjoyed about high school was uh, just kind of like learning about people and being around people. And I was kind of the product, and I was kind of like the product of the village. Like I was, you know, my dad sent me money. My mom, I mean, I would still see my mom, and she would, help take care of me from time to time. And other people in town, the vice principal at the high school was very important to my development. And he kind of helped make sure I graduated as well.
mm,
And so I think being able to interact with people on a more kind of young adult level, um, that was important to me. And I learned a lot about life, I think, in high school. So, and that the vice principal kind of helping me make sure I graduated because I didn't go to school as often as I should have.
uh,
Uh,
okay.
that helped me understand life a little bit. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I learned.
Mm. When you say your vice principal made sure that you graduated, what actions did he take, or did he come to your house? What did he do?
He would talk to me in his office. He kind of gave me grace. He kind of understood that I was not the perfect student. And I had my issues, but that I think he understood I was a pretty okay kid and that I had potential. And so he just made sure that I did come to school and that I did understand it was important and that there were people that in the system that cared about me and wanted to see me finish.
Mm. Very cool. So what did you realize that you needed to do? What did you do after high school? What was graduation like? And then you said, okay, now what's my next step?
Yeah, I even before I graduated, I did pre-early enlistment in the US Army.
Mm,
So like Christmas of my senior year, I went up to MEPS and enlisted delayed entry. And so I was just waiting to join the army basically. I knew that if I went to college, it would probably be a waste of time and money for a lot of people. So
mm.
myself included.
Right, right.
Uh, so I just enlisted in the army and I tested well. I was able to kind of pick my job. I was able to be a counterintelligence special agent. And so that was in 2000 and I enlisted in the army.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service. How long were you in the Army for?
I was in the army for 5 years, 5-year enlistment, and then after I got out, I essentially did the same type job as a civilian.
Mm, very cool. So why did you pick that particular career?
Well, I've always been fascinated by um, the Middle East. Lawrence of Arabia was my favorite movie growing up. I
Mm,
wanted to do that,
mm,
and I figured I wanted to do counterterrorism as well. And I figured the army was. I knew that there's only two ways into the intelligence community, and it's either usually through Ivy League schools or through uh, the army and the military.
mm.
So and I picked the army because they would guarantee my job and contract. None of the other services will guarantee your job. They'll give you a probably, but they won't give you like a for sure.
Mm,
So um, that's kind of how I ended up in the army. I wanted to do something. I wanted to kind of help the world. I was kind of idealistic.
that's pretty cool. So you didn't like school, but now you join something where I believe you have to do a lot of learning, right? So tell me about that.
Yeah, I never minded studying on my own.
Mm,
And once I got through basic training and once I got through my job training, I knew I'd have more freedom. So it was, going and I was kind of a rebel and I asked why a lot. So going through basic training and job training had its difficult moments, but I mainly just kept my mouth shut. I talk a lot. I talked a lot when I was a kid. I talk a lot now, but I kept my mouth shut in basic training. I mainly stayed pretty quiet during my job training and I just, everything in the army is taught at the 8th grade level.
mm.
Um, it doesn't even counterintelligence is taught at the 8th grade level.
Really?
Yeah, every school. And so I just kept my nose down and learned and got through that. And then when I got to my permanent duty station and started doing the job in real life, it was more teaching myself and learning from my peers versus like a pure education environment. So it was a much more open and we talked about reading a little bit, but it's very much like reading is life. Like and I realized early on that if I would just read, I had an incredible ability to retain information and be able to recall it. And
Mm.
so just reading really served me quite well.
That's incredible. So you came out of the military and you kept doing the same job. What kind of a company did you look for, or did they find you?
Well, when I joined in 2000, I got out in 2005. So that was like peak Iraq War,
Mm.
Afghanistan, especially Iraq. But
Oh.
there were jobs everywhere overseas, and I knew by that point I was kind of into the system and like really into my job. I really liked it. And I had two options. I could either go and stay overseas like I'd been doing as the Army, or I could go back to Washington, D.C. and work in like a cubicle and, battle 495 twice a day on traffic. And I couldn't do that.
Right.
So I looked for, we looked at my wife went with me. We were together almost this whole time.
Mm.
And we looked for companies we were pretty selective in looking for companies that had the type of job that we wanted, because there were a lot of different jobs in our field. But we finally found a company that had a pretty specialized job in Baghdad, and that's working for counterintelligence field activity, which is called CIFA.
Mm.
It was like Rumsfeld's pet project. And so it was a CIFA office over in Baghdad that we ended up working for.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk about what made you decide to start moving on to what you're doing today. What was the catalyst, if you will, that started that path for you?
That's a deep question.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Well, I spent 12 out of my first 15 years of adult life in Kuwait, Baghdad, and Kandahar, Afghanistan. And so when I went home, kind of in those in-between years, I went home in 2015, and my wife and I were kind of lost. We didn't really have an identity outside of our job. So there was we were traumatized, and depression and anxiety, PTSD, all that kind of stuff. So I spent about 7 years where I was just kind of wandering around. And I think we're all on a path, whether we know it or not, like a spiritual path, we're all on a journey, right? And even if we don't know it. So I was on a journey then. It was a rough part of it. And for me, it was just time helped. And then I was laying in bed one night with my wife. She was asleep. It was late. And I just had this profound idea that there was the oneness of the universe and that we're all connected. It was a very warm, kind of loving kindness type thing. Some people call it an awakening. It was like a lightning bolt. I understood what I wanted to do in the world, what my higher purpose or dharma was. And I it was this idea that we're all connected, but more than that, we're all saying the same thing, whether we're, all this great human thought from around the world and across time, like we're all pointing in the same direction. And we're all so invested in where we're right, when we're all right, So I had that kind of moment where this all became so clear to me. And then I knew that I wanted to go kind of help people help themselves. And that's what changed my life.
Mm. Mm. So you found a calling, right, if you will.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you had to start sharing it? I mean, you found it for yourself. When did you realize you needed to start sharing it with others? And what did that look like? Did you even know what that looked like or what it was going to be?
I kind of did. I wasn't a spiritualist before at all. So when it happened, what was strange for me is I suddenly had this understanding of the universe, but I didn't know how to talk to people about it, necessarily communicate, because I didn't know the vocabulary and how to speak about it with people. So I read probably, I think, 60 books in 4 months, something like that. And, went on the web and talked to people and educated myself on different religions, spiritual constructs, philosophy, self-help, all that kind of stuff. And so that I could talk to people. I knew that I wanted to be able to talk to people about it. I want to be able to communicate with anybody about anything in that kind of genre and realm. And I also knew that I wanted to start a nonprofit online spiritual community where I could share my journey and people could share theirs. So like I had a goal as well. And I told myself, work every day to make this happen, and I did. Because I was dedicated. Like I said, it was a life-changing moment for me. I went and got my life coaching certification during this whole process. And There's technical stuff, there's administrative stuff, there's creative stuff that I had to do, and so it kind of all came to me, and so I started to do all this stuff kind of like, I planned it out and try to do what I could every day.
Mm. So when we talk about spirituality, is that a religion? Is that a feeling? Is that, I mean, I have mine, but for somebody listening, what does that mean to them? What can they gather from that?
That's a great question. I think spirituality for each person is going to be very different. I think we all have our own unique, like fiercely personal spiritual path that we're walking.
Mhm.
I think that it can be informed by what others see and do, because we have all this knowledge that we can share with one another. And I believe that regardless of whether you're a spiritualist, an atheist, a Hindu, a Christian, we should be able to sit around and ask questions of each other and provide answers to each other, and maybe change the questions that we ask and change our answers that we have kind of resolved for ourselves. But at the end of the day, it's about what we decide to piece together for ourselves. And uh, that's kind of where I was going with it, is how do we empower each individual in their own unique spiritual path so that they understand what spirituality is to them. And that's really what it kind of was for me.
Mm. So what I'm listening is that spirituality is unique for each individual, right?
I believe so.
So how do we connect? How do we connect? If you're an atheist, if you believe in, you know, in Christianity, if you're Jewish, if you're a Hindu, a Muslim, how do we connect through spirituality?
I believe that most of us know that there's something
Mm,
beyond this, beyond
mm,
our human form, behind our consciousness. People call it Christ consciousness, they call it the universe, they call it nature, they call it the Tao, all these different things, right? But I think we all have a sense of that. Most of us do, even scientists, right?
mm,
Like Max Planck was the father of quantum physics years ago. He said, science postulates consciousness. We know we see it, we can't prove it, but we know consciousness exists. Science pretty much accepts that consciousness exists,
mm,
even if it can't explain it. So even atheists or scientists can appreciate that there's something larger than ourselves, because we can't define consciousness scientifically. So
mm,
I think we can all see that thing that is beyond us,
right,
but it's still part of us.
mm. So how do we teach spirituality, say to a child, to a teenager, you know?
That is a very worthwhile question that I think a lot of us should spend more time on, because
Mm,
I think that we owe it to ourselves and our society and our communities to raise our children in such a way that we can show them different ways of doing things, of being, and see what they think about it. And we don't teach philosophy enough in
mm,
schools. We don't. Um, I think there's room for even I think there's room for theological education in schools, like where you teach different religions, and
mm,
that's part of philosophy. Like, so you're teaching philosophy as the Western philosophy, you're teaching the Eastern philosophies, Taoism, Buddhism, Hindu, and the Abrahamic faith as well, and all the other paganism, and then teach that alongside Western philosophy and the Greeks uh and everything that's come after. Uh Down to self-help and self-improvement, which is usually pretty philosophical stuff, right? The self-help genre. It gets kind of a bad rep sometimes, I think, with Americans, especially. Like, it's like you're reading a self-help book, sometimes it's like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm bettering myself, it's philosophy. But I think
right.
all of that is something that we can teach our children to be open-minded and to be critical thinkers for themselves.
Mm. You brought up a very interesting subject, teaching it in school, but I think a lot of religious people would say, well, You can teach my child my religion, but I don't want him knowing other religions. I don't want him. So why does my child have to learn that? And I don't believe in that. So that's very controversial. But when we think about being open-minded, the the problem is that the fanatics are not, because their
Yeah.
religion is the only religion.
Yeah.
So
Well, growing up in Oklahoma, our state had an Oklahoma school for science and math. And it was like a state funded boarding school where you could go learn STEM
mm,
uh, in high school. And I thought to myself back then, and even in many years since, that like, why isn't there an Oklahoma school for like liberal arts, history, and philosophy, and like in literature, like where we're teaching open minded free thinking and stuff. Yeah, I think that we definitely devalue that as that open minded education of our youth for sure.
I think that I think that the best way that we can start to help people know more about the different religions, the different thoughts, the different thinking, is to be more open about it, right? To have conversations like this, to allow people to make their own opinions. Because I grew up Roman Catholic, and a lot of the things that the church does, even till today, I don't necessarily agree with. And it was like rammed down my throat, like, this is what you have to believe. And when I was old enough, I stopped going to church, but I still believed in God, right? And I picked up the Bible, and it was so controversial. I was like, this makes no sense. I threw it away, and I got mad. I'm like, looking for something. I'm looking for something. And I picked up another Bible, picked it up. It makes no sense. I got rid of it again. But because I didn't know how to read the Bible, right? I had no real education on what these things meant. And still, even sometimes, I'm reading the Bible now. I go to a Christian church. It's not Roman Catholic. I don't have to sit, stand, sit, kneel. It's more like I go to a concert every Sunday, and we read from the scripture. But there's still, to me, a lot of controversy, because if God is full loving, why would it in the Bible there's some scriptures that says he damned certain people? I'm like, did he really? But he's showing love. Why would he damn people? Why would he, you know, take take these people out and do so? To me, there's still so much controversy, and because you and I were not there, and no one can answer this. Did that really happen? Right? Did the Israelites really stay in the desert for 40 years? Where's the proof? Right? So there's always these questions that I have. I still believe in God. I'm not going to stop believing in God. But then I question, who wrote the Bible?
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's a fair question. I grew up Southern Baptist, and I kind of had religion. My parents were liberal progressives. Both sides of my grandparents were Southern
Mm,
Baptist. So I grew up in a very, very conservative kind of shove religion down your throat church.
mm.
And I had a lot of questions. I spent a lot of time in the hallway in Sunday school. Like, uh, and I stopped going to church. I did the same thing. And I mean, my dog tag said Christian when I went in the army, but
Mm,
I I tell people now, I'm an omnist universalist. I believe in different things, but I feel more Christian today, right now, than
mhm,
I ever felt in the church. And I have a great affinity for the Christian mystics. And uh, I think I think that question you asked about who wrote the Bible,
mm,
you know, yeah, it didn't, we didn't start to put all that together until years after Jesus died, right? And I mean, it's pretty well accepted that Jesus probably lived at some point. And I think that throughout all the time and throughout all of this, that every single person that touched the Bible, every human that touched the Bible, every council that was held to decide what went in the Bible was all of it completely and 100% divinely inspired. Seems like a long stretch for me. So for me, those human touch points are just that. They're human, and that's okay. I think if we accept that and say that's okay, then
Right.
suddenly we're having a better conversation and saying, that doesn't take away necessarily from a lot of those red letters in the New Testament, that those things that Jesus said, which are not very different from what Buddha said, or, even Confucius or Lao Tzu, right? It's loving kindness. It's the golden rule. It's all that stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when we talk about love and love one another and all this stuff, yeah, we all get that. But condemning or I don't know
No, I don't believe, and I don't believe in hell. Like I never, even as a kid, I was like, hell doesn't make any sense to me. Like I never, even as a kid in Sunday school, I didn't accept hell. And I couldn't accept that the whole rest of the planet, other than like Protestants, were going to hell. It didn't make any sense to me.
That's very funny. When you consider, then you have people who say, well, if there's a heaven, there has to be a hell. Right? If there's an up, there has to be a down. Right. So when we think of all things, there's a left, there's a right. So when we consider all the things of spirituality, I think, and one of the things that reason I stopped going to church is because the message that I received over and over and over and over again, even from Roman Catholics, were God is in you. He is everywhere. So let me ask you, why do I have to go to church to talk to Jesus? Why can't I talk to him right before I go to sleep or in the middle of the day while I'm driving in the morning? Why can't I talk to him in 2 minutes from now? Why do I have to go to this place? And it kind of was answered for me when I started going to this particular Christian church. They said, you don't have to be here. And that's the first place that ever said, you don't have to be here. Because most of them are like, you must come, right? But they say, you don't have to be here. But here, we're a community. We're here to help one another, to serve one another. And that made more sense to me. Because community is much larger than you must attend or you'll be damned, right? I think that spoke volumes to me.
Yeah, that's the idea that you have to be here or bad things happen is almost the anti-community. And so I love that idea that it's about community, and for me that's it. We have this fiercely unique spiritual path we're going to walk that's our own. It doesn't have to be lonely. It doesn't have to be dark. It doesn't have to be this solo painful thing. It sometimes is. It sometimes necessarily might be that. But most of the time, I mean, we're tribal creatures. We're community creatures. Sometimes we're herd animals, and that's okay. Like, we're meant to be together. There's something about the way that we're built that says it's warmer. We're better off when we're together sharing these things. And like, we're all energy, right? We're all stardust. So when we're all together, we can feel that. We can feel each other's energy. We can help one another, and there's this ebb and flow of this universal rhythm and motion and change of the universe. And when we're all together, we can handle that better. It's what we're meant to do. So I very much subscribe to the idea from a spiritual perspective that it is this very communal thing. It doesn't have to be for everybody. For some people, it's going to be more isolated, but for most people, there's going to be some community involved, and you're going to be way more likely to live a aligned life of mind, body, and soul if you've got other people around you that you can say, hey, I need help with this, or maybe I help you with that. You're more likely to succeed.
Yeah. And that's what community is, right? That's where I think, if you're going to go live in a cave by yourself, you know, you can't move that, 10,000-pound boulder by yourself. But in a community, you can all chip in and you can all move it together. So I think that that's where the community comes in, where you can do more, right? That's where team comes in, right? Together we achieve more, right? That's the word team. But when you consider spirituality, it's your own. It has to be yours, right? It really, your spirituality is not mine, and mine
Right.
is not yours, right? It has to be unique to me, how I think about the universe, what I think about you, what I think about this person, what do I even think about myself. And I think that's where we start to understand spirituality a little bit. It's more about our thoughts and our actions. What do you think about that?
No, it is about our thoughts and our actions, and it's what we do. We are what we do.
Mm,
And if I think that goes back to saying, what are my values and beliefs?
mm,
Who and who am I out? If you strip away all this stuff that society told me that I am, or should do, or shouldn't do, or and all this stuff, what do I believe? And am I living that? Am I living those things aligned with 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 who I am? So yeah, I think it's very much this individualistic thing that you figure out, and you kind of ask yourself and move your thought process forward. And how do we communicate that? How do we live that? How do we be at peace with ourselves? And I think that speaks to self-love as well, and self-care. I think our society puts a lot of emphasis on helping others and being the hero for others, but I
mm,
think often we don't teach to love ourselves. We don't teach to take care of ourselves, and that's where it starts.
right.
That's the essence of being more connected, I think, with everything, whether
Mhm.
it's the divine, other people. If you're not loving yourself and take care of yourself, you lose that connection to everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So you made me think of a thought. We have society, and in society, we have communities, right? Because there's so
Hmm.
many different types of communities. Um, so I think we sometimes are fighting society,
Yeah.
right? We're fighting the rules, the regulations, the government, if you will. Um, but sometimes in a community, we find that solace if we're looking for that place where we kind of belong. I think that that's why a community is so important to all of us, and it doesn't matter. A community could be you and four people, right? It
Right.
doesn't have to be 10,000 people. It could be a small group, which is almost, let's call it family, right? So, how important is it to align yourself with the community?
I think whatever you do in life, you should be aligned with it. And so I
Mhm,
think it's really important, because if you're not in alignment with these big aspects of your life, you're going to be out of sync. You're going to be out of sync with yourself, people around you, and you're not going to be happy. I mean, at
mhm,
the end of the day, life should be joyful. Life should be full of peace and calm. If
mhm,
that's so that you don't have anxiety, you're not stressed out, you're at ease. And so being in alignment with the community means you're going to be more uh, happy with where you're at in life. And so, and like you said, that could be 3 or 4 people. It
mhm,
could be, it could be 10,000 people. And we are tribal beings, and sometimes our being tribalistic can be a bad thing. we we get caught up in our tribalism as humans.
mhm,
But I think once we accept that we're tribal beings, and we don't let that define us necessarily, we're just a part of it, and we accept it. But we also say, I'm a part of this tribe, but I fully accept all these other tribes. They're cool.
mhm,
They're doing their thing. I'm doing my thing. Then we're going to be happier, not just with ourselves and our community, but then our community is with each other as well.
mhm. So, John, you created Kishar.org. What does the word Kishar mean to you?
Yeah, it's the Sumerian goddess of Mother Earth or Gaia, and it also has another meaning in Sumerian as the line on the horizon, which I think kind of beautifully encapsulates that journey
Mm,
that we're all on,
mhm,
Um, and we wanted to name our community something that was meaningful, and we thought that Gaia Mother Earth was an appropriate name, and I think something that everybody can kind of connect with, the nature and the idea that we're all sharing something special here on Earth.
mm. I love when you talk about the horizon because it's something we can see,
Yeah.
but we can never touch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you get it. That you get right. It's that old cliche of life's journey, not a destination, right? Like it's true though, right? We never get where we think we're going.
No.
So it, if we learn to love the journey along the way, that's everything.
Mhm.
It,
Yeah.
even building this community that I've built, like there's technical stuff I had to do that I may not love. There's other stuff, there's creative stuff that I love more. There's admin stuff that might not, I might, but if you can find a way to enjoy that kind of stuff that you don't love, but find a way to incorporate it in with what you are doing that you love, suddenly you're enjoying the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, a lot of people don't like to cook, but they enjoy the meal. A lot of
Right.
people don't like to clean their home, but they like living in a clean home.
Exactly.
It's the people that live in a dirty home that don't care how their home looks, right? So it's I think it's taking care of 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 your life. If you live in listen, if you're a hoarder and you save newspaper, I went to somebody's house and I've never seen that many newspapers in one person's home. And it was narrow hallways. You had to move sideways in order to walk in their home. And I'm like, when did you start collecting these newspapers? They were an old gentleman. And he goes, oh, I said, well, why? Oh, I needed to read that one. I needed to read that one. I'm like, yes, but even if you got rid of it, you read it already, right? Sometimes you need to pass on that knowledge, that experience to other people. But sometimes people want to hold it to themselves. And I think that's why the hoarding starts, where they don't want to share it because it's for me, for me, for me only. And when we can learn to share, like you're sharing your spirituality, you want to hear about other people's experiences. This is why I think you created kishar.org, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I wanted a place where people a safe open space on I feel like we could have authentic meaningful connection in the digital era, and that's why we created it. And it's a place where people can share their journeys. I can share my own. We can talk to each other. We have meditations and resources for people, and
Mm,
talk every day. And there's I'm things like verbal affirmations or journaling prompts, just stuff that really can I'm really interested, and our community is really interested in that intersection between our spiritual path and this life that we live day to day.
mm,
Most of us aren't going to live out in a monastery in the foothills of the Himalayas, right? So how do we live this spiritual existence in this day to day reality that we occupy with everybody else,
mm,
and move through it together and in a way that makes sense for us?
uh-huh. So, you just brought up a really interesting thought in my head, and it's if you are living as a monk in the Himalayas, what purpose are you truly serving? Because you're not impacting anyone but one person, yourself. I'm just curious.
I do believe that a monk that lives in the foothills of the monastery is in the Himalayas in a monastery is and only impacts themselves is still lifting up the world. Because I think that if we lift up ourselves first and foremost, I believe that suddenly we're going to lift up the world around us.
Mm.
And that's a life-changing thing. That's a world-changing thing. I think we can change the world. So I think that is where it starts. And so it's a beautiful concept because that's the start.
Right.
That's
If you were living in a monastery up in the foothills and all you did was, hum all day long, how much of an impact would you be
I
making right now?
I think that I would have a bigger impact doing what I'm doing here. I think
That's
that
what I'm saying.
yeah.
That's what I'm
Um,
getting.
yeah, for sure. Because someone's got to go out and have a message and try to connect with people and really try to have people connect with each other. I think we're really sometimes I feel like my job is to try to get people to talk to each other and connect, so that we can all have this richer experience and um that more communal experience that we were talking about. So I think, yeah, with some people our dharma, our higher purpose is to go out and spread the message.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that because when we first started talking, you told me you were an introvert, but yet you liked people. So you had that contradiction going on. No, I
Yeah,
don't want
still
I
do.
want to be by myself, but I like people. And you and I are very similar because I enjoy my alone time very, very much till today. I mean, this is why I get up. By the time people are eating breakfast, it's my lunchtime, you know?
Sure.
So, but, and I don't need a lot of sleep because of the way my body, I listen to my body.
Sure.
Right? So sometimes it's only 3 hours, sometimes it's 4 hours. If I sleep longer than 6 hours, my body is in pain. I don't know. Don't people like you have to sleep longer? I try. I literally I lay there and I'm like, okay, nothing is happening. I'm not sleeping. I'm just here. So I might as well go do stuff. But if I ever sleep 6 hours for some reason, I wake up in pain. My body's achy and all this stuff. But if I listen to my body and I get up when my body says get up, and I'm full of energy all day long. It's not like I have that, that afternoon, I need my coffee. I don't need coffee. I choose to drink coffee, right? I don't need coffee the first thing I wake up. Like, oh, I have to have my coffee. I can't even talk. I'm excited to be up. I'm rejuvenated. The minute I wake up, I thank God. That's my spirituality. I am grateful. I wake up in gratitude. I go to sleep in gratitude. In the middle of the day, I'm like, man, I am so lucky that I can move my hands, that I can breathe deep, that I can move, that I can think, that I can write. So I'm always in gratitude and never forget that it can be taken away at any given time.
Yeah, I love gratitude's that really truly special thing. I think if we live in gratitude every day, it makes life a lot easier.
Hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. So what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my health. I think that's the
Mm.
first thing I'm ever grateful for. And I'm grateful for my health. I think health is wealth. It's
Mhm.
this thing that really defines our human experience a lot. And so I really appreciate that. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the opportunity to live and learn and connect with people and be with my family. Those are the things I'm grateful for.
Mm. What's one thing that you're beyond passionate about?
That people are empowered within themselves, that they love themselves, and that they know that it's going to be okay. Like humanity's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. This world's going to be okay. Like I'm very passionate about that.
Mm. Why is that so?
Because there's all this messaging, these headlines and everything, and we have a lot of noise in the world. I think if we can just slow the world down, if we can understand that there's all this background noise, there's it's all right there. We're whole right here, right now, like all of us. Even if
Mm.
you don't know, you're whole inside. Even if you don't think there's light in you right now.
Mm.
So I really because my military experience and some of the things when I was being part of that military industrial complex and seeing all that darkness, I appreciate the value of light and knowing
Mm.
it, and I really want people to know to know that about themselves and about the world.
Mm. So, how important is the learnings that you received in the military with your spirituality? How do you connect them?
There is a huge connection. It's taught me the great contrast between dark and light. Uh, I learned what it means to be to do a job with complete and utter dedication. Where I mean, my job was my religion in the military, and afterwards as a civilian, I was completely dedicated to. I used to work 100, 110 hours a week, 7 days a week, working 18 hours a day. I didn't do anything else. I lived my job every day. So I know what it's like to be completely dedicated to your craft in this insane, almost inhuman way. Um, so that was a very informative experience. I was to this driven, like, professional person, like, and so I can kind of relate to people like that. That's helpful, I
Mhm.
think. And that's helpful for me now because I can look back and say, "Oh, I was living my purpose then." It wasn't a great purpose. I think there was a lot of darkness there, but I was living my higher purpose at the time.
Mhm.
I didn't know it.
Right.
Um, and there's something kind of spiritual about that in and of itself. So it's almost like I had this spiritual experience, especially my 6.5 years in Kandahar, Afghanistan, consecutively. I had this spiritual experience I wasn't even realizing at the time.
Mm. What was that?
I mean, I did a lot of good. Our unit did a lot of bad, but I mean, we were also responsible for protecting people, and we did that, and we did it really well. And I was able to mentor people and educate guys that were younger than me, and uh, I used to say it was the best thing I ever did. I think my nonprofit spiritual organization is that now, but at the time, for a long time, it was the best thing I ever did. And
Mm.
it's complicated, but I helped people in a meaningful way. Even
Nice.
though if I could go back, I probably wouldn't do things differently, but it's complicated.
Yeah, I hear you. So, what can somebody expect when they go to your website? What can they
Yeah,
expect when they get there?
it's the entrance to our community. They can find uh, entrance to our community. They can also find one-on-one spiritual guidance and coaching. And we also have links to our socials, and that we have a pretty cool YouTube channel we have that's free and open to the public that is just useful to live a line mind, body, soul, spiritual life. And um, it's just a place where people can kind of explore themselves.
Nice, nice. So, when we need a place to go to, we should go to your website, kishar.org, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and how does somebody get in touch with you if they want to know more about you, if they want to be coached by you?
There's plenty of information on the website about who I am, and I have a our very first YouTube video kind of tells my story, and so people
Mm.
can watch that and see what I'm all about. And we co-founded this nonprofit with my wife and another friend of ours she grew up in the Balkans during that war, and we met her in Afghanistan. She's a co-founder, and it's everything in the nonprofit goes back into the community, all the funds and everything. We don't take salary, so it's this thing that we're trying to give back to the world, make the world a
Wow,
better place in a genuine sort of way.
that's incredible. Wow, thank you for doing that. And anybody who's definitely interested, the website is across the screen. It's Kishar, KISHAR.org. Right? Did I say that right, Kishar?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, good. Excellent. John, this has been a fun conversation. Thank you for enlightening us and keep doing what you're doing, man. I think you have a beautiful soul. Keep it up, and I think that you're making a difference in our world. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Raphael. I appreciate your show. I also appreciate the message you're putting out, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, my friend. Have an
Yeah.
exceptional rest of your day.
You
Take
too.
care, everybody. We will see you next time. Take care.